Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Garhdo Goes Geek. On today's episode, it's just another quick review for you. I want to talk about the recent Five Nights at Freddy's film. I'm going to talk a little bit about the games as well. It's a decent little film, off of quite an interesting little franchise. So I thought I'd just say a few things about it. So, Five Nights at Freddy's, for anyone who may not be aware, it was a few years ago that the franchise was kind of at its height, is a series of jump scare based horror games created by Scott Cawthon. So, a single bloke working on his own. Now, Scott Cawthon, he has a few political beliefs that I find quite distasteful. And so as a result, that's not something I support him for personally. However, I do remember when this series originated and the sort of hype that it had, and how it generated kind of this culture, especially on YouTube. A lot of YouTubers did start playing these games. These games became very, very popular, and a big part of that is because it was one person making it, and they were indie games. They were very simple in terms of their gameplay. The first three, in fact, I think the first four, were all released within the space of a year. And it was after that point that a lot of the things about Scott Cawthon himself kind of came to light, and that's where I sort of stopped following the series. But yeah, within sort of the first year, we had 4 games in this series. Now, the game series originally started because Cawthon was a struggling games developer. He'd come out with a game that was featured like a woodchuck and was criticised for the animation. The animation looking quite wooden and looking almost like a bad animatronic. And Cawthon decided to run with that. And what he created instead was the idea of a game based on you being as the night watchman in this former animatronic based pizzeria that had shut down after some point. The difference is that the animatronics in this pizzeria come to life and try to break in to where the night watchman is, and if they get in where you are, they will kill you. And so your goal as the night watchman is to watch cameras, work out where they are, and if you see them coming towards your doors, you put these big metal doors down. Now, you couldn't just put the metal doors down all the time because they drain the power, as does using the cameras, and you had to manage your power consumption as well as everything else. On the surface, it sounds pretty simple. It worked quite well as a jump scare, like horror game. So obviously that worked really well for a lot of YouTubers. Markiplier especially was a YouTuber I was watching at the time, and his Five Nights at Freddy's videos were very, very popular. Obviously others like PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye. I'm showing my distinct lack of YouTubers now, but there were a lot of them all playing this game. But Markiplier in particular was the one that I used to watch. And then obviously there were other bits in the game as well. There were little bits of like lore and theories. Like there's one of the cameras you're able to view a like a newspaper clipping saying that some kids had gone missing and they disappeared. And then there was another clipping you could see where it said Five Nights at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria had closed down because of hygiene related reasons. Apparently the animatronics stank, and so a lot of fan theories kind of sort of came back. Well, it was like, okay, well, some kids have gone missing and their dead bodies have probably been stuffed inside the animatronics. And it seems that that's the case. That's the lore of this series. So there was these little hints of things going on. And then there were Easter eggs. Like there was a fifth animatronic that showed up on certain events and caused like a non-standard game over. There were other little Easter eggs and other things going on that would just sort of tie together. There were phone messages that you would get every night that could add more to the story. Like one of them mentioned something called the Bite of 87. And then everyone was like, well, what's that? And so on. And obviously then that led to sort of theory videos and MatPat, for example, on game theory, again, had a very successful line of videos exploring the series. And then obviously when the second game came out a few months later and upped the gameplay, added a whole load of new animatronics, completely different location, no doors, new gameplay mechanics, that's when things really started to take off. And that's where the lore became more accessible, because this is where, well, not accessible straight away. The second game introduces a set of mini games which kind of explain, like, after you finish each night, you get a mini game, and the mini games sort of give you more of the story. Like, there's a purple guy in them that was like in this, horrible pixel art, like looked like Amiga style pixel art. Is it the Amiga, Commodore, one of the really old pixelated consoles, pre NES. Um, but yeah, and ColecoVision. This purple guy was revealed as the one who was abducting the kids and possibly killed the kids. And then there was a new animatronic introduced called the Puppet, and the Puppet is the one that had kind of given them life. Like there was a whole mini game which was give life, and as the puppet flies around to these corpse children, he gives them the masks of the other animatronics in the game. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, who are the four main animatronics. And this all kind of captured people's attention, and captured mine as well. I was one of those people theorizing about it, and then of course the second game kind of suggests that it's actually a prequel to the first game, and like the Bite of 87 actually happens to the Night Watchman in that game, because after you finish the fifth night, he gets told, "Oh, we need you on the day shift tomorrow," and then speculation that's where the bite happens. And then the third game was this disused attraction, which was like, it was like a museum, like kind of exploring the whole Freddy Fazbear's mystery, like after both of the previous games. And there was only one animatronic at this one. This animatronic was called Springtrap, and in fact, he's not even there the first night. So the first night of the third game, there's no animatronic. There's just other ghostly jump scares. And this animatronic is far more horrifying looking than anything else, and it's a golden bunny with like a purple bow tie, but kind of stalking around and moves in a very weird way. And it was kind of suggested in the mini games for that one that the purple guy is inside this animatronic, and in fact, it was eventually revealed right at the end. Like, he puts the Springtrap suit on, and it crushes him and kills him, and he possesses Springtrap in the same way that the dead children possess the other animatronics. And so obviously there was all these theories and all this other stuff. And then the fourth game is, a child's nightmare, a child in a coma and his nightmares of the four, the animatronics like stalking him inside his house. And then, the mini games for that one reveal that actually this child was terrified of the animatronics, but he obviously lived right near to the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and he's kind of speculated that his brother was a big fan of them and kind of playing games on him, pranks on him, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of lore. I don't want to get too into it because it expanded even more after I stopped following the series. Like, there was lore books, there were novels, all written by Scott Cawthon himself, and he kind of explained everything about who these characters are. And then obviously there were more games. There was Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted. There was Security Breach, which is like its own thing. Sister Location. All these different games that just kind of expanded the whole thing and took it in different directions and introduced other characters and kept expanding the lore. And what the film seems to have done, because as far as I understand, there's comics and books and the games themselves, and they all kind of explore different elements of the same story, but like with different core characters. So it's like the characters in the books aren't necessarily the characters in the games, but there's still links to the main family, the main person who made the animatronics. But obviously, everyone knew this was going to get a film eventually. Like, it was immediately eyed as a potential film franchise. And, especially with the animatronics and how they looked, there was a real sort of desire to get some proper animatronics in the film. And so everyone was looking at the Henson Company. Fast forward to now, and the film is actually out, and it's been done by Blumhouse Pictures, who do a lot of these, lower budget, more experimental horror films, and they have actually hired the Henson Company to do this. And the films come together. Films come out now. It's tying together a lot of lore elements um, from the games. Like a lot of the idea of the first game is in there, like the whole idea of the missing children, someone who's killed them, the idea that they're possessing the animatronics. It's all there. Even the purple guy is there. It's all there, right? But the film does a lot of quite interesting things with it, and visually, for the budget it has and everything else, it's very simple, but it looks amazing, and the characters look incredible. Like Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy all look like they've stepped out of the game. Every single one of them. And so many of these like Easter eggs and other little references. Like if you're familiar with those first few games, they're all there. And even if you're not familiar with the games, I think you'll enjoy them regardless. So the story of this, you've got Josh Hutcherson, I believe it is, who played Peter in the Hunger Games. He is playing a character called Michael. And he's having a bit of a rough time of it. He's been working as a security guard. He loses his temper on the job one day, gets offered the night guard position at this remote location. And he accepts. And the reason he accepts is because, despite the fact he has trouble sleeping and other things like that, he accepts the job because he is looking after his little sister, Abby. And his aunt is trying to take custody from him for Abby, which Abby doesn't want. And so Michael takes the job. The job involves basically watching this old abandoned pizzeria, with these 4 animatronics, and just, making sure it stays safe, making sure no one breaks in, no one wrecks everything, everything like that. It's very simple and straightforward. While on the job, he meets a police officer called Vanessa, who comes in and kind of, explains everything to him. She's quite familiar with the place. She's very familiar with the animatronics. She actually introduces him to the animatronics for the first time and kind of shows him them. And then the two of them gradually get together, and you get closer, and Michael reveals that in his history, his when he was a child, his younger brother Garrett went missing while they were on a family trip. Like, he was abducted. He was taken in a car and driven off. When Michael was meant to be watching him, and Michael feels guilty about that. And so Michael keeps taking these sleeping pills to sort of relive that dream because he's hoping to always try and find a new clue. While he's at he's at Freddy Fazbear's at the pizzeria, and he takes these tablets and falls asleep on the job. Um, while he does that, his dreams not only become more vivid than they ever have before, but in his dreams, he also sees 5 other children. And it's these children are the missing children that were tied to the Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria. This is why the pizzeria is shut down. This is why it's a closed location. But it's closed, but the owner can't get rid of it. Can't bring himself to get rid of it. And yeah, from there he ends up taking Abby with him to on the third night, and Abby meets the animatronics. And it turns out Abby's been seeing these imaginary friends for years, and the friends she's been seeing are the exact same kids that he now sees in the dream, the kids that are inhabiting the animatronics. And so she gets really close to them. And from there, there's some really nice stuff between the characters and the animatronics. Some really nice stuff. And the animatronics themselves, like I said, they look really good. They look amazing. The Henson team have done some great work. There's a lot to be said about practical animatronics, and these look really, really good. So yeah, it was really nice seeing them all together and seeing, I'd put this up there with like a really good adaptation of a source material, because like even looking around the restaurant, like the set they have built for the restaurant matches the layout of the restaurant that you have in that first game. Like the views that you have through the camera, they're all there. The main eatery area, the main stage, Foxy's little side stage, the arcade, the ball pit. Like, some of it is expansion on what you can see in the game. Like, there's no arcade and ball pit in the game, but it makes sense for the real location. If this is like a Chuck E. Cheese style location, that makes perfect sense. And the kitchen is something you don't see in the original. There's no camera in the kitchen. The kitchen camera is broken. Like, I think you can hear through it, but you can't see anything through it. And so yeah, it's perfectly entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. And it looks good. Like, the attention to detail when it comes to the set design and the animatronic design is all there. Story wise, it's not great. It's not perfect, but it is entertaining enough, and it doesn't assume a lot of previous knowledge. Like, you can go into this movie knowing nothing about the lore, nothing about the games, and still come away having had a decent time. Like, it's a pretty standard horror experience. I'm not even sure I'd qualify this as a horror. There are some more horrific bits in it, mainly due to some side plots that I haven't mentioned quite early on, and then some quite dark stuff that I don't want to spoil towards the end. But I don't really want to, spoil any of that. Like, but even then, it's not horribly gory. It's not particularly violent. Like, I think it may even have got a PG-13 rating in America. I don't think its rating over here was that high. It was about 12A, maybe 15. There is all of the gore is off screen. It's done with shadow. There's very little gruesome stuff in it. which means it's perfectly watchable. And that also makes perfect sense because the core audience of this game is children. Well, not children, but like preteens, teenagers. That's the sort of people who are watching the Matt Pat Theory videos. That's the sort of people who are watching the Markiplier Let's Plays, when these games were coming out. I was quite older. I was watching it because my kids were watching it. And then they were watching it, and I was going, actually, what? There's a story here. They were telling me all these things, and I was like, oh, there's a story here. Okay, well, I'll have a look. And then I had a look, and that's where I got involved and sort of interested in it. It's not a game I would play anyway. Even if I was more likely to support it, it's not a game I would play. It's not my type of game at all. But in terms of a film, it's perfectly fine. And it's gone on to be one of the most profitable video game films ever and one of the most profitable films for Blumhouse ever. In fact, probably one of the most profitable of the year. And simply because it was made for a really sensible budget. And it just proves that you don't need to go for a ridiculously large budget. Like, Blumhouse have really lucked out here. And, they've already done some amazing work in the horror space, but this could be their big sort of this could be their big money maker in terms of how cheaply they could make these films and potentially how profitable they could be. And I think, if the second or third film that they're inevitably going to do is as good as this, I'll probably keep watching. Cast is likable enough. It's got Matthew Lillard as one of the supporting characters. I like Matthew Lillard in a lot of things anyway. He's quite good in this. Elizabeth Lale plays Vanessa. The child playing Abby, Piper Rubio. I've not seen her in anything else, but she's, again, perfectly serviceable in this. She's brilliant. Child actors can be a bit hit or miss, and I think in horror especially, you really have to hit with a child actor for them not to be insufferable. But no, Abby's lovely. She's kind of close to being like the heart of the film in a lot of ways. And, Josh Hutcherson is a very capable lead. So, yeah, it's simple, it's nice. And, there's definitely hints for very strong hints for a sequel right at the end. I think a sequel is inevitable, really. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I really don't. I'm perfectly fine with the idea of there being a sequel to this. So, yeah. That's my view on Five Nights at Freddy's. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And yeah, there's some really good moments in it and some good stuff towards the end that I don't really want to spoil. There's a couple of good twists. If you know the game lore, you might see them coming a mile off. But even if you don't know the game lore, but if you're aware of things around this game, like if you know the stuff in this game, great. But even then, if you know stuff in the series, there is some stuff in this that will surprise you because some of my kids were a lot more clued up on the franchise than I am, and some of that stuff still surprised them because they're like, "Oh, wait, that's not supposed to happen," And having watched another recent Matt Pat video, I can say that it's probably because this is actually taking elements of both the game canon and the comic canon and the book canon and kind of merging them together, kind of putting them all in a blender and taking all the best bits, like a FNAF smoothie. But also, if you were aware of all the stuff when this came out, and you were aware of like the hype that everything had here, um, then you might also find some nice little elements that maybe might surprise you in other ways. For example, certain cameos or songs or other references that maybe were kind of big at the time that this whole thing really kind of kicked off and really came out. So, yeah, there's that as well going on. But yeah, it's quite a fun little film. I enjoyed it. I'd probably end up watching it again. So yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's. What did you think about it? I'd love to hear what you think. Um, until then, you all look after yourselves. You take care. Look after yourselves the very best you can. And I'll speak to you next time. I might have another Blumhouse film that I want to do a review on or a mention on somewhere at some point. So we'll see where that ends up. Until next time, my friends.
Thank you, my friends, for once again joining me on Garhdo Goes Geek. Your continued support for this podcast means the absolute world to me, and I am grateful for every single one of you who stays and listens to one of my episodes. It means the absolute world. Now, if you would like to engage more with me or the podcast, we have a Discord community, small but growing, and we now have commissions open on Ko-Fi. So if there's a topic you would like to see me cover, you can pay me to cover it. All funds will be used for legal purchase of the relevant items where I do not have them. Have a look on the link tree for more information. Until next time, look after yourselves.